The moment my mother opened the door, she didn't hug me. She didn't even look at my face. Her eyes went straight to my suitcase, and she said, as casually as if she were asking me to pass the salt, "So you'll stay and watch the kids, right? We're leaving early tomorrow for the resort." I stood there, still wearing my coat, my hands aching from dragging that suitcase across 2 airports, and for a split second, I thought I'd misheard her. Behind her, my brother Daniel appeared with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, sunglasses already on his head, like he was halfway gone. He smirked and said, "Try not to let them destroy the house, okay?" They laughed. All of them. And something inside me shut off so cleanly it scared me. If you stay with me until the end, I'll tell you exactly how that one sentence ended their vacation before it even began. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, you need to know how I ended up standing on that porch in the first place. My name is Rebecca Sloan. I'm 32 years old, and I live alone in Portland, Oregon. I work in product analytics, which means I spend my days solving other people's problems with data and logic. I'm good at it. I'm calm. I'm responsible. And apparently, those qualities made me the perfect person to call at 2:47 in the morning. That was when my phone started vibrating on my nightstand. I remember squinting at the screen, my room still dark, rain tapping softly against the window. It was my mother. FaceTime. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But when I did, her face filled the screen, blotchy and red, tears streaking down her cheeks like something had gone terribly wrong. "Rebecca," she sobbed, pressing a hand to her chest. "We never see you anymore. The holidays don't feel right without you. The kids keep asking when Aunt Rebecca is coming home." I sat up in bed, my heart already racing, my brain still half asleep. She talked and talked about how families fall apart when people drift away, about how Christmas only feels like Christmas when everyone is together. She said she was scared that one day I'd stop coming home at all. I told myself she was just emotional. I told myself this year would be different. I told myself I wouldn't regret it again. So I booked the flight. I booked it that same night, rubbing sleep from my eyes, ignoring the price, ignoring the familiar knot forming in my stomach. I took time off work. I filled a suitcase with gifts for my nieces. I imagined walking into that house and being welcomed, maybe even hugged, the way I used to be when I was younger. The flight was long, delayed, crowded. By the time I landed, my phone battery was nearly dead and my back was screaming. I took a cab to my parents' house in Arizona, the one I'd helped keep afloat more times than I could count, and stood on the porch, adjusting my grip on the handle of my suitcase. I rang the bell with a stupid little smile on my face. The door opened, and reality hit me harder than jet lag ever could. No, "How was your flight?" No, "We missed you." No hug. Just my mother's eyes flicking down to my suitcase, and her voice saying, "You'll stay with the kids while we're gone." I glanced past her into the house. I saw printed itineraries spread out on the counter, resort photos, confirmation emails, Daniel's kids bouncing around in excitement. Everyone already packed, already mentally checked out. Daniel leaned against the wall, grinning. "You're a lifesaver, Beck. Seriously." That's when I realized something very important. They hadn't asked me to come home because they missed me. They hadn't flown me out because they wanted family time. They brought me back because they needed someone to stay behind. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just felt that quiet click inside my chest, the sound of a door finally closing. And before I tell you what I said next, let me ask you something. As you're listening to this right now, where are you tuning in from? For years, I told myself it was normal. Families help each other. That was the sentence I repeated every time my phone buzzed with my mother's name. Every time Daniel texted late at night with a casual, "Hey, quick question." That was never actually quick. I was living in Colorado Springs back then, working long hours, building a life that finally felt steady. I paid my rent on time. I tracked my spending. I cooked most nights and packed leftovers for lunch because it made sense, because I liked knowing where my money went. That discipline was the reason I always had something to give when my family called, and they knew it. It always started the same way. My mom's voice would soften, drop into that careful tone she used when she didn't want to sound desperate. "Rebecca, it's just a small thing," she'd say. "Just this once." My dad needed knee surgery, and insurance wouldn't cover everything. Daniel's credit cards were maxed out because his business idea had hit a rough patch. The electric bill was overdue because they'd had an unusually hot month. The water heater gave out without warning. None of it sounded unreasonable on its own, And that was the problem. I wired the money. Every time. Sometimes my mom would text afterward with a heart emoji and a promise. "Thank you, honey. We'll pay you back when things calm down." Sometimes there was no thank you at all, just silence until the next crisis appeared. I told myself I wasn't keeping score, but some part of me noticed how often those emergencies lined up with holiday weekends, sales, or photos she posted later from a new brunch spot downtown. While I was budgeting groceries, they were replacing throw pillows. While I was skipping dinners out, they were posting pictures of matching cocktails. I tried not to resent it. I tried to believe the version of the story where they were struggling, and I was just lucky. Then there were the little things that added up without asking permission. Streaming subscriptions in my name because it was easier to bundle them. A shared phone plan that somehow never switched back. Random charges I didn't recognize until I traced them to Daniel's kids downloading games. When I brought it up, it was always brushed off with laughter. "You don't even use it," Daniel would say. "What's the big deal?" The big deal didn't hit me all at once. It crept in quietly, disguised as paperwork. One night, after a long day at work, I opened an email from a bank I didn't remember dealing with. It had my name on it, paired with my father's, and the subject line mentioned a mortgage statement. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. Then, I opened the attachment, and my stomach dropped. I was listed as a co-borrower on my parents' house. When I confronted my mom, she sounded surprised that I was upset. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "It was just a formality. They needed your name to get a better rate. It doesn't affect you." She said it the way someone says the weather will clear up soon, as if facts could be smoothed over by tone alone. But it did affect me. Every time they missed a payment and I quietly covered the gap, it hit my credit too. Every time I sent money to make things whole again, I was tying my future tighter to decisions I wasn't making. I started paying closer attention after that. I saved every transfer confirmation. I kept screenshots of texts promising repayment. I noticed how often "we're short this month" turned into new furniture a week later. There was a moment, sitting alone in my apartment, when I stared at my banking app and realized something that made my chest ache. The only time my family treated me like part of the household was when a bill was due. I wasn't their daughter or their sister in those moments. I was a solution. I thought about saying no so many times. I drafted messages I never sent. I imagined the fallout, the disappointment in my mother's voice, the way Daniel would accuse me of abandoning them. Guilt has a way of rehearsing arguments before anyone else gets the chance. So I kept helping. I kept telling myself it wouldn't always be like this. I kept believing that if I showed up enough, gave enough, someday the balance would tip and they'd see me differently. But deep down, long before I stood on that porch with my suitcase, I already knew the truth. I wasn't surprised because I'd been trained not to be. I'd been taught, slowly and quietly, that my role in the family was to absorb the pressure so everyone else could breathe. I asked everyone to sit down before they finished packing. My mother hesitated at first, fingers still clutching the printed itinerary, like it might disappear if she let go. My father took the chair at the head of the table out of habit, his posture stiff, his jaw already set. Daniel dropped into a seat with his phone in hand, half listening, the way he always did when he assumed a conversation didn't concern him. The kids spun in circles on the tile floor, humming with excitement about pools and room service and everything that didn't involve responsibility. I opened my laptop and placed it in the center of the table. "Before anyone goes anywhere," I said, keeping my voice steady, "we need to talk about money." Daniel let out a short laugh. "Seriously? Right now?" My mother shot him a look, then turned to me with that familiar expression, the one meant to soften conflict before it could fully form. "Rebecca, honey, this isn't a great time. We've all been under a lot of stress." "I know," I said. "That's why we're doing it now." I clicked the trackpad, and a spreadsheet filled the screen. It was clean, organized, color-coded, the way I organize things when I don't want emotion to blur the edges. Dates lined the left column, amounts stretched across the page. Notes sat neatly beside them, copied word for word from texts and emails I had saved over the years. I started at the top. 3 years ago in March, I said, scrolling slowly. The mortgage was 2 months behind. I sent $1,200. In June, Daniel's credit cards were maxed out. I sent $2,500. When the water heater broke, $900. When the electric bill was overdue, $300 here, $400 there. No one interrupted me. The room felt different already, heavier, as if the air itself had thickened. I kept going. "This doesn't include the streaming services," I said, highlighting another section. "The phone plan, the grocery deliveries, the random Venmo requests labeled emergency that somehow always landed right before holidays." Daniel finally looked up, his face draining of color as he recognized his own words in the notes column. "I'll pay you back next month. Just need a little help until things settle." My mother's hand flew to her mouth when she saw screenshots of her messages beside transfers she'd forgotten existed. My father stared straight ahead, his eyes fixed on the wall, as if the numbers might rearrange themselves if he didn't acknowledge them. "I'm not trying to embarrass anyone," I said quietly. "I'm not rewriting anything. I'm just showing you what actually happened." I scrolled to the bottom. The total sat there in bold, just over $60,000. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the kids stopped moving, sensing something had shifted beyond their understanding. My mother shook her head slowly, whispering, "That can't be right," as if repetition could undo math. Daniel swallowed hard. My father didn't say a word. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin stack of papers, placing them gently on the table beside the glossy resort photos. "This is a simple agreement," I said. "It's not a lawsuit. It's not me taking anyone to court. It just states that this money wasn't a gift." Daniel picked it up, flipping through the pages too fast to really read them. "This is insane," he said, his voice cracking. "We can't afford this." "I know," I replied. "I'm not asking for it all back at once." My father finally spoke, his voice sharp. "Families don't keep ledgers like this. You don't put a price tag on helping your parents." I met his eyes. "Families don't pretend money doesn't count when it's convenient." My mother looked at me then, really looked at me, fear creeping into her expression. "Rebecca," she said, "you wouldn't do this right before Christmas. You wouldn't humiliate us like this." I took a breath, then clicked to another tab. The resort confirmation appeared on the screen. Names, dates, a familiar credit card number at the bottom. "You might want to sit down," I said, though no one moved. "That trip you're packing for, it's been canceled." Daniel shot to his feet. "What?" "I called 3 days ago," I said calmly. "Since it was booked on my card, I had every right. The charges have been reversed." My mother stared at the word canceled, as if it were written in a foreign language. "You had no right," my father snapped. "Those were our tickets." "They were my charges," I replied. "And I'm done funding vacations I'm not invited on." No one laughed this time. No one joked. The room filled with the sound of shallow breathing and the faint buzz of my laptop fan. I closed the screen slowly, letting the silence sit between us. "That's what I meant at the door," I said. "I'm not babysitting while you vacation, not anymore." I took one more breath before opening the final file. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I had imagined this moment so many times that the fear had already burned itself out, leaving something colder and clearer behind. I turned the laptop back toward them and opened the email from the bank, the one I had read and reread until every word felt carved into my memory. My name was there, not buried in fine print, not implied, but written plainly beside my father's. Co-borrower. My mother leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Rebecca, we already talked about that," she said quickly. "That was just paperwork. It doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," I replied. "It means my credit is tied to this house. Every missed payment, every shortfall, every late fee hits me too." My father's chair scraped against the floor as he shifted. "You're overreacting." I clicked once more, and a small video window appeared in the corner of the screen. A woman's face filled it, framed by a quiet home office, her expression calm and professional. "Hi, Rebecca," she said. "Is now still a good time?" My father's voice rose. "Who is that?" "This," I said without looking at him, "is the financial advisor I spoke to before I ever got on that plane." The advisor nodded politely and got straight to the point. She explained, in measured language, what it meant to be a co-borrower, how my credit was legally responsible for the mortgage, how covering gaps wasn't generosity, but liability, how I had the right to request removal from the loan, and what that process would trigger. My mother's face drained of color as the words sank in. "If Rebecca withdraws," the advisor continued, "the remaining borrowers will need to qualify on their own. That could require refinancing, or, if that isn't possible, selling the property to satisfy the debt. "You can't do that," my mother whispered, her voice trembling. "We can't afford to refinance." The advisor didn't flinch. "That's a discussion you'll need to have with the lender. What I can say is that Rebecca is not obligated to keep her name on a loan she doesn't benefit from, especially when she's been subsidizing it." I thanked her and ended the call. The room felt smaller after that, like the walls had edged closer while no one was looking. My father stood abruptly. "You're going to make your own parents homeless over numbers on a screen?" I met his stare. "No. I'm going to stop letting you gamble with my future while pretending it doesn't affect me." I reached into my bag again and pulled out another document. "This is my notice," I said, placing it on the table. "I'm stopping all automatic payments connected to this house. The joint checking account is being closed. From now on, the bank will contact you directly." My mother made a choking sound. "That account pays the utilities," she said. "That's how we buy groceries." I nodded. "Then it's time you start paying them yourselves." Daniel finally spoke, panic threading his voice. "You can't just pull everything at once. Give us time. I'll pick up more shifts. I swear." "You're 34, I said quietly. "You have 2 kids. This shouldn't be new to you." I opened the final tab on my laptop, the list of recurring charges I'd set up over the years. Mortgage supplements, power, internet, streaming bundles, grocery deliveries. One by one, I hovered over the cancel buttons. "As of today," I said, "these stop." Confirmation emails chimed on my phone as I clicked. Each sound felt like a cord snapping, sharp and final. "This is cruel," my father muttered. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm stepping out of a role you all assigned me without asking." I closed the laptop and stood. My legs shook, but they held. I picked up my suitcase and headed for the door. My father followed, his voice hard. "If you walk out like this, don't bother coming back." I paused with my hand on the handle. "If I'm only welcome here when I'm paying for everything," I said, "then I was never really welcome at all." He pointed to the door. "Get out." So I did. The desert sun hit my face as I stepped outside, the door closing behind me without ceremony. No one followed. No one called my name. I ordered a rideshare and dragged my suitcase to the curb, my chest aching and oddly light at the same time. When the car pulled up, the driver asked where I was headed. I gave him an address they had never known. A small condo across town, one I had quietly bought months earlier, just in case the day ever came when staying cost me more than leaving. The first sign that my absence was finally being felt didn't come through a phone call or a knock at my door. It came through my screen. About a week after I moved into my condo, a friend sent me a screenshot with a short message underneath. "Have you seen this?" It was my father's social media page, his name sitting above a long post about ungrateful children and sacrifices that go unnoticed. He never mentioned me directly, but he didn't have to. He wrote about how some people forget where they came from the moment they build a life of their own, how blood should matter more than money, how he and my mother had been left with nothing right before the holidays. The comments poured in. Old neighbors, distant relatives, people who had watched me grow up. They offered sympathy, prayers, and advice about tough love. My chest tightened as I read them, because I knew how easy it would be to shatter that story with a single screenshot, one spreadsheet, one list of transfers. But I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself publicly. I had learned that some battles aren't meant to be fought in comment sections. Instead, I stayed quiet and stayed organized. While my father posted, letters started arriving at their house. The bank wanted updated information. Utility companies wanted full payments instead of partial fixes. The comfortable fog they'd been living in began to thin, and there was nowhere left to hide from the math. My mother texted me late one night, panic leaking through every word, asking if I had spoken to the bank. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted them to suffer, but because answering would have pulled me right back into the role I had finally stepped out of. Daniel was the first one to really feel it. He picked up more shifts. He started driving longer hours. He cut expenses he'd never questioned before. When he finally met me for coffee weeks later, he looked exhausted in a way I had never seen. He didn't apologize outright, but he admitted something quietly, staring into his cup. "I didn't realize how much it all cost," he said. I thought it just worked out." That was the truth none of them wanted to say out loud. My mother came to see me on a gray December afternoon. When I opened the door, she looked smaller, stripped of the confidence she wore so easily when she thought I would always catch her. She held a reusable grocery bag against her chest like armor. Inside was an envelope with a check. It wasn't much. It wasn't meant to be. "I sold some things," she said quickly. "The bags, some jewelry. It's not enough, but it's something." Then she stopped talking, and the silence between us stretched until it broke her. "We did use you," she whispered. "I did." It wasn't dramatic. There were no raised voices or perfect apologies. Just a tired woman standing in a small living room, finally admitting what I had known for years. I didn't hug her right away. I didn't promise forgiveness. I told her the truth instead, that we could only have a relationship if money was no longer the price of admission. She nodded. She cried. She left. My father never came. He never retracted his posts or acknowledged the damage, and for the first time, I understood that acceptance doesn't always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like distance. On Christmas Eve, I sat alone on my couch with a mug of hot chocolate, the lights from my small tree reflecting softly off the window. There were no flights to catch, no babysitting schedules, no emergencies waiting to be solved, just quiet. And for the first time in my life, that quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Here's what I learned. Family doesn't disappear when you say no. The people who truly care will adjust. The ones who only loved you for what you provided will call you selfish the moment you stop bleeding for them. It hurts, it takes time. But sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, it's survival. If you listen to this story from beginning to end, tell me what you think. Did this story resonate with you? What kinds of stories should I share next? And if you want to hear more real stories from women who chose themselves, please like, subscribe, and stay with me for the next one.